Russia's best-known event, the Tunguska sighting, is sometimes referred to as the Russian Roswell. In the early hours of June the 30th, 1908, peasants of the Tunguska River area in central Siberia watched in disbelief as a glowing round object with a fiery tail streaked across the morning sky. The object crashed in a remote region of pine forest, exploding in a brilliant ball of flame. Residual firestorms lasted for weeks and destroyed an additional 10,000 kilometers surrounding the crash point. Although the event preceded the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki by nearly 40 years, the aftermath of Tunguska was frighteningly similar to that of the bombings in World War II. The result was the destruction of an area larger than that of Los Angeles or Moscow. Oddly, upon investigation some 20 years later, no impact crater of any kind could be found. Researchers have formed various opinions of what actually happened. The most common beliefs are that it was a meteorite fall, a ball of lightning, or an earthquake. Many have cited that none of these answers are possible and that the phenomenon was more likely the crash of an extraterrestrial craft. It has been speculated that the governments of many countries throughout the world have been gathering information regarding UFOs. Nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman agrees.
There's no question that military and intelligence groups overseas are collecting data, whether it's in Brazil or Australia or in England. So the KGB has collected information. I've talked to people who've gone to the Soviet Union who have obtained some of that information. I have met a Soviet cosmonaut and other researchers over there. There's no question they're interested. And again, the republics which used to constitute the Soviet Union cover a huge area. They too were monitoring the skies because they were afraid the United States was going to bomb them. So when you monitor the skies, you pick up UFOs, no question about it.
During the communist reign, there was no official admission of Soviet interest in extraterrestrial activity. It has been only recently that this fact has been confirmed. The former secretary of the Commission on Anomalous Phenomena, Alexander Petyukov, confirmed that an official state-controlled body did exist.
В рамках этой комиссии, когда в силу своей деятельности она начала планомерный сбор информации.
During the Soviet era, we started to regularly collect information from the public and received more than 15,000 reports. The thing is that the commission was an official public organization. It had an official address.
Today, the mindset in Russia is far different from what it was during the communist reign.
Under communism, they were told that UFOs didn't exist, but just the fact that they were told they didn't exist made people believe that they did exist, because the government was also denying. They were saying there was no crime in Russia and accidents didn't happen. That everything was censored and given this rosy picture, which of course people knew better.
It was in a small house on a side street near the Academy of Medical Sciences. The British and American spies met with informants throughout the 60s and learned of one of the most bizarre plots in the world of intelligence.
During my involvement for a period of at least 6 years, Soviet counterintelligence operatives played cat and mouse with Western agents in Moscow who were interested in our advanced technology programs. Some new weapons and propulsion systems were being developed, and the CIA was using any means to get information from anyone involved with the project.
While I was in Moscow for a year and a half, I had 2 other agents and a guy from the British Secret Service. We routinely debriefed 2 Russian informants who worked for the Ministry of Defense. We would exchange hard currency for information on new military technology. Some of this technology was definitely related to UFOs.
One way we often dealt with such incursions was to feed false information through double agents to give American and British bad leads.
Well, we knew the Soviets were onto something after we started getting all kinds of smokescreen intelligence. That was a sure signal that they were hiding something. It was an indication that they had recovered something near Sverdlovsk. They were keeping it very secret.
Senior research scientist Dr. Richard F. Haynes believes the Soviets had good reason to be interested in UFOs.
It's my understanding that the Soviet military has had a continuing interest in UFO phenomena for very, very many years. And the reason being that their air traffic controllers, their radar sites, their military pilots had been reporting things, just as ours had, and they had no explanation for them. And so the first possible explanation would be that it's a foreign nation test or espionage or something like that of a military nature. And if you're in the military yourself, then you take that very seriously and you explore it.
This film footage certainly seems to depict interest by Russian military personnel in the object that is seen sticking out of the ground. Soldiers, officers, and civilian-clothed agents are deployed around the site, and they appear to be both guarding and examining the object. This is what we found on one of the 4 reels of film obtained in Russia. After viewing the footage, we were able to determine that it was most likely shot with 2 separate cameras. One apparently a handheld camera, which starts out on the approaching truck, and a second one seen here on a tripod. As the soldiers march past, you can see the cameraman turn to follow the troops. Here we cut to the other angle, the point of view from the tripod camera. And here you see the handheld camera as the truck pulls up. Both cameras change vantage points several times during the filming, as if to get better views or perhaps under orders of a superior. From this angle, we see yet more troops arrive. Author Veniamin Vereshchagin describes the event.
Весной же 1969 года рабочие местного совхоза
In the spring of 1969, a collective farmer found some strange remains in the forest not far from Berezovsky and reported that to the local security organs, who in their turn asked the neighboring military division of air defense troops, PVO, to provide assistance with the investigation. On March 1969, 2 KGB officers examined the discovery site and sealed it off.
Вы знаете, в дальнейшем события приняли более такой масштабный характер. По просьбе КГБ были привлечены.
On the KGB request, a Soviet army unit was brought to the discovery site.
И в результате уже очень тщательных обследований были найдены.
After close examination of the place, they found some wreckage debris of a disc-shaped object partially sunken to the ground.
Поначалу органы безопасности предполагали,
At first, the KGB thought that the debris
американскому разведывательному самолету или
came from an American spying plane or a Soviet spaceship.
George Filer, a retired Air Force intelligence officer who was stationed at Langley, is not surprised the Russians were so interested in this object.
We found that the Soviets would pay to get information on UFOs as opposed to, we'll say, an F-111 aircraft, that they were, in a way, more interested in UFOs than some of our latest aircraft.
And here you see the man who is probably the head KGB agent directing the cameraman to point his camera toward the disc. A total of almost 1,200 feet of negative were recovered just on this crash site. It is possible that more film was shot, but this is all that we were able to obtain. None of this film depicts the removal of the disc itself, and at no point do we see inside the object. From this angle, we do see the handheld camera shooting behind or inside the disc. However, that footage, if it was, in fact, ever shot, was not included in the cans of film we acquired. We can only speculate that it may still be at large. We must also speculate on how the object ended up here. Based on information from Vereshchagin's book and what we can see in this footage, we have created this computer-animated version of how researchers believe the crash may have occurred. The questions then become, where did this object come from and how did it come to crash here? And more importantly, what has happened to it since? Coming up next,
$10,000 US. These documents better be real.
when we return right after this.